What do New Orleans, Houston, and New York City all have in common? All three are among the country's most rapidly sinking cities. These metros are losing landmass each year as the landscape sinks further and further into the ground. The sinking, which is officially known as land subsidence, is happening in coastal areas and far inland places too. In fact, a study recently published in the journal Nature Cities found that all 28 of the biggest American cities are sinking.
Ground level is dropping at small rates, millimeters per year generally. And it seems to be really an ubiquitous issue that almost every place that there's people concentrated, we're seeing sinking.
That's Tom Parsons, a research geophysicist with the United States Geological Survey. Along with major cities in the U.S., land subsidence is also striking cities across the globe. Places like Jakarta, Mexico City, and Venice, to name a few. So why is this happening? Parsons says there are several causes, but the primary culprit is excessive groundwater extraction through aquifer systems. Many towns and cities around the world aren't near a fresh water source and rely on the water beneath the ground.
When we pump the water out of the ground, the space that used to be occupied by water starts to collapse. And so that basically, you take volume out from underneath the city is going to drop a little bit. There are some notable examples. Jakarta in Indonesia, they've pumped an enormous amount of groundwater out from underneath that city to the extent the city has dropped to the point that they're moving the capital away from Jakarta because the flood risk is great there.
While the largest contributor to land sinking is human-caused, there are other causes too. The Earth's crust is always slowly shifting and rebounding from the retreat of massive ice sheets following the last ice age. Along the East Coast, this movement causes unpreventable sinking over time. In other areas, like parts of the Mississippi Delta, rivers and streams are compacting sediment, squeezing it so tight that the land loses volume and can no longer hold water.
Another city that's sinking significantly is Lagos in Nigeria. It's a city built really on sand spits and islands and marshes. It's a river delta. And there's a huge concentration of people there. They're building on that. And so with the combination of that subsidence and they're pumping groundwater, of course, then it's a coastal city. So flood risk is great there too. I mentioned New Orleans. That's you can even see that when you're in town. You can see the fire hydrants that are elevated above street level because it's a river delta, which means that it's a kind of fine particles that can compress under their own weight already. And then there's a lot of hydrocarbon extraction going on in that town too.
Each case is different, but land subsidence is happening across the board. Another expert who studies this phenomenon is Pietro Teatini, a professor of hydrology and hydraulic construction at the University of Padua in Italy. He's also the chair of the UNESCO International Initiative on Land Subsidence. He explains how taller American buildings also feed into this problem.
The largest contribution is caused by anthropogenic activities. Anthropogenic activities, as we say, is mainly fluid removal from the subsurface, is also the load that we put on the land surface. So if we start building up cities with very high and heavy buildings, this causes more subsidence than, let's say, former urban zone where the houses are relatively small.
And climate change will make the problem even worse. If rivers and lakes dry up due to global warming, cities may have to rely more on groundwater pumping, which speeds up the sinking process. While a change of 3 millimeters per year may seem like nothing over time, the compounding effect stacks up. In coastal cities where sea levels are rising and the land is sinking, flooding is becoming a much more common problem.
We know that the sea level is rising a few millimeters per year every year. And at the same time, if the ground is dropping, that can potentially double the amount of inundation that can happen through big storms, hurricanes, and things like that. We see flooding in cities. And as that ground gets lower, that problem gets greater and allows water to reach further inland. And that can happen near lakes and rivers as well.
This sinking still poses a major threat to inland regions that are far away from bodies of water. When land sinks, this doesn't always happen evenly and can result in critical infrastructure issues.
Buildings, if they're sinking uniformly, there's usually not a problem. I mean, in fact, when they build a building, they already know it's going to sink under its weight right away, and they call that settlement, and it's expected. The problem can occur when there's not symmetric or asymmetric sinking. So say one corner of the building is sinking faster than the rest of the building. That can put a lot of strain and stress on the building. It's not designed for that. And so in some cases, we've seen some issues with buildings getting torqued and affected that way.
In addition to compromising the structural integrity of buildings, asymmetrical sinking can crack roads, weaken bridges, and disrupt underground subway systems. So far, the damage has hardly been noticeable, but this could all easily change in the next 5, 10, or 20 years. While some of the causes are unpreventable, Teatini says there are steps that local and federal municipalities can take to slow the sinking.
The most important point is to, let's say, if available, try to use surface water. This is a first point, because there are cities, as we say, the city in Far East, where they have a lot of surface water, but they are not able to use it properly, and therefore they have to move in the subsurface. So if you have surface water, use it. Try to develop, for example, basin or infrastructure in order to recharge your aquifer system. So when you have wet season and a lot of surface water is available, let's use properly those water also to artificially recharge our aquifer system in order to have more resources for the year or for the season where droughts start to, let's say, to be in place. This is for sure a most important strategy that we can put in place.
While these solutions are mainly in the hands of government officials and city planners, Teatini says listeners can also make a small impact by conserving more groundwater, especially in drought-prone areas. He also warns that as climate change intensifies, poorer regions will be hit hardest. While many parts of the U.S. are sinking, in other parts of the world the situation is even more dire. The reality is that undeveloped and developing nations have less money to fix large-scale infrastructure issues and implement proactive solutions. This puts people's lives at risk and creates an uncertain future for generations to come. As we work together to protect our cities, it's worth remembering that land sinking is a global problem that requires a global response.
In the developed country, so Western country, I would say land subsidence is still there. Is still affecting part of our cities and our also rural zone, agricultural areas. But I would say that generally is largely or mainly under control. We can do better, but we have already tackled properly generally this problem. What it is nowadays, the most important point is that in developing country where there is this unbelievable large growth of coastal cities or megalopolis, in those regions, really the problem is nowadays much more serious. And it is expected to become even more serious in the future, exactly due to climate change.
If there's no action, the gap between who sinks and who stays afloat will only grow wider. Some cities will have the means to adapt, while others won't. The cost of inaction isn't just measured in dollars, it's measured in lives, in homes, and in futures lost. To find out more about Tom Parsons, Pietro Teatini, and all our featured guests, visit viewpointsradio.org. For more behind the scenes and to support our show, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Viewpoints Radio. This segment was written and produced by Grace Galante and Amira Zaveri. Our studio manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Gary Price.